Let me be brief with the introductory remark. Distinguished speakers, panelists, colleagues, and participants, it's really a great honor to welcome you to this webinar on promoting high-growth youth entrepreneurship for job creation in Africa. This session is part of the broader, as you know, is part of the broader series designed to inform Africa Development Impact Forum, which will be taking place in June here in Addis Ababa. Today's session focuses on an issue that's really central to Africa's development and for Africa's future. How do we enable young entrepreneurs not just to start businesses, but to build enterprises that grow, scale, and create jobs for others? Across the continent, young people are demonstrating remarkable innovativeness and resilience, yet too many face persistent systemic barriers in their aspirations to become entrepreneurs, including limited access to funded access to skills, limited access to information about support from government and other sources that's available to them, limited networks, fragmented ecosystem. And all these elements are preventing, basically, materializing their great ideas into productive work stream. So the purpose of this webinar is threefold. First, to take stock of what works and otherwise in supporting high-growth youth entrepreneurship. Second, to identify the underlying barriers. I already mentioned several of them, and how can these be addressed. And third, to generate practical insights and recommendations that will directly inform design and priorities of the upcoming Development Impact Forum, but beyond design and practice of the government programs and policies. So discussion will aim to highlight sectors with strong potentials, and we know some of them, like tourism, technology, creative industries, manufacturing, we should not forget agribusiness, and of course the green economy. Then what constitutes conducive ecosystem and how specific is it for young people? How does it differ from other entrepreneurial ecosystems? And in particular, what would be the youth-friendly financing for entrepreneurship? So today's session will also contribute to a set of concrete outputs. We aim to have policy brief and then also map kind of the evidence identifying proven practices and knowledge gaps so we can actually support South-South cooperation and peer learning. We are honored to be joined by outstanding group of speakers and panelists representing government, the private sector, development institution, and of course, importantly, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. This diverse perspective will be essential in helping us to move from discussion to action and also see where Economic Commission for Africa can contribute to this endeavor. So let me also emphasize, this is not just a conversation. We really want to hear from you, from both panelists and participants, learn from your insights and engage in the process of co-creation and supporting productive ecosystems for young entrepreneurs in Africa. With that, it is my pleasure to hand over to the other speaker, as was said by Flavia, which is the director of ADIF. So thank you, Mr. Karima Bunemra. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna, for jumping and taking the floor to present the webinar. Bonjour à tous, j'espère qu'à présent l'interprétation marche et que vous pouvez suivre nos présentations. La plupart vont malheureusement être faites en anglais, donc j'espère que vous allez pouvoir suivre ce que nous sommes en train de dire. Quant à moi, je vais maintenant passer à la langue anglaise, avec votre permission. Comme l'a dit Susanna, ce webinaire est le troisième. Okay, I said I will switch to English and I'm continuing in French. Sorry, guys. Yeah, as Susanna said, this webinar is the third of its nature. It is part of what we call the pre-forum webinars that will lead us to the African Development Impact Forum that will take place in June in Addis Ababa. And on a monthly basis, we are proposing issues that will be discussed as a way of identifying how we can improve, boost, ensure job creation in Africa. And when we say job creation in Africa, we are not only talking about numbers, we are talking about decent and sustainable jobs, because we have seen a number of occurrences where numbers prevailed, but sustainability was a problem. So we are having these discussions before ADIF, so that we make the meetings during ADIF themselves more concrete, more tangible in terms of solution offering. We have started with a first discussion about leveraging Africa's critical green minerals for youth employment through regional value chains. And this has led to very rich recommendations in terms of the axes where jobs could be created and maintained. The second meeting was about AI and jobs in Africa, and we asked ourselves whether it was an opportunity or disruption. So today, with our colleague from the social development division of the Economic Commission for Africa, we are looking at promoting high growth youth entrepreneurship for job creation in the continent. And we are, in addition to the director who joined, welcome you, we will be joined by key partners and speakers from the Africa Development Bank, the ADIF Foundation, Bunaroma Coffee Exporters, Ethiopia, and Ethiopia Ministry of Innovation and Technology. I hope I have not and we have the CEO and founder of Lercha. So these are some of the distinguished guests that we have invited to join us and discuss this issue. Susanna has already given you the context in which, this specific matter will be discussed. And as I said, we are expecting you not only to brainstorm on the current situation, but to see how we can move from where we are today to something more concrete, better coordinated, so that we end up with a real programs for job creation during the African Development Forum itself. And for those who were not with us in previous session, let me just summarize the fact that ADIF is taking place in three steps. The pre-forum, where we will have these webinars and call to action. The forum itself in June, and then an implementation clock, because as we said, ADIF is a platform between research and practitioners, decision makers, doers, and we really want the ideas that will emerge through the pre-forum, through the various discussions we'll be having during the forum itself, to become a real project that our partners will look into, will support their implementation, will finance their implementation, etc., etc. So we will be looking at all the opportunities beyond the obstacles, how we can move from the obstacles to real opportunities and solutions for job creation in the continent. So it's a very pleasure to welcome you again, to see that once again we are approaching the 200 participants, which is very encouraging, actually, from session to session. And back to you, Susanna, for moderating the session and inviting the speakers to take the floor. Thank you very much. Bye.
So thank you very much, Karima. I have a problem with the video. So, yes, so I would like to invite our first speaker who has a great expertise from the African Development Bank and will give a brief presentation of what the bank has been doing in this area and some of the key takeaways. So with that, I'd like to invite the Chief Financial Economist and Coordinator of the Enable Youth Program at the African Development Bank, who leads the continental efforts to create jobs, especially for young people, through agribusiness and entrepreneurship. He has a deep expertise in youth employment, agriculture transformation, and development finance. So over to you, Edson, and we are really very happy and honored for you to joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susanna, and good to see you again. So colleagues, I think that is not the presentation I had for me. That's for somebody else. Can you please put the other presentation? That's not the presentation, please. Yes, that's the correct one. So you can start the slide one. Okay, thank you very much. So just to say that again, that just making here. Okay, yeah, so to begin, yeah, so thank you very much again. I'm here representing the African Development Bank. Among other things, one of my roles here is as coordinator of the Enable Youth Program, which really is aligned to the discussion of today of promoting high growth youth entrepreneurship in Africa. And I must say that this is also one of the biggest priorities for the bank, creating jobs for youth. And this is enshrined in the bank's 10-year strategy and also in the 4 cardinal points of the bank. So really, this is a good topic. So I have about 10 minutes. I'll go through, the highlights, share with you where we are as a continent, what are some of the challenges, some of the proposed ideas, and finally, some a way forward. Now, let me begin by proposing that Africa's youth entrepreneurship challenge is not only about helping more young people start businesses, it's about helping more young people build growth-oriented businesses. So as colleagues have said, that we need to build businesses that can innovate, scale, and create jobs. In the end, that is one of the biggest priorities for the bank, rather not for the bank, but for the continent, and also contribute to structural transformation. The opportunity is enormous, and the gap is also enormous, but the ambition in the ecosystem is there. Can you go to the next slide, please? Now, I'd like to share this slide that really shows the status of youth on the continent. Africa's youth wave is an economic opportunity, or it will be a missed one if we do not prepare correctly. This is very important right now for our continent, where 75% of the population is under the age of 35. This youth demographic, if you look at the pyramid, the youth pyramid there, actually in Africa, the base of the pyramid is still growing for the next maybe 20 to 30 years. Whereas it's the complete opposite in most of the developing countries. If you go to Europe, if you go to Japan, their base is getting thinner and thinner, and actually the top is getting wider. So in sub-Saharan Africa, about 53 million people were not in employment, education, or training. What they call youth is to measure, the employment opportunities, and also to point out that 3 in 5 youth who are not in education, employment, or training are women. So there's a challenge here to address to address the gender aspects. Now, statistics show us that by 2035, there'll be more young Africans joining the labor force each year than the rest of the world combined. So really we have to, as a continent, all the institutions that are here, the UN ECA and the African Development Bank and others, we really need to address this aspect of youth opportunities, so that we should not, come after, in a few years and find that it has been actually a challenge. But I think we can make it work at scale and with quality. Next slide, please. So I'd like to take a few moments to share, what's the current status of the high youth entrepreneurship on the continent. There's actually a lot of dynamism on the continent right now. We find that the startups on the continent in 2024 raised $3.2 billion. Now, that is quite, it shows resilience. However, this is still a very narrow pipeline when compared with the scale of the youth population on the continent right now. We also find that fintech has a special place in this area. It attracts most of the financing, and about 60% of total equity funding in 2024 was to the fintech area. So, unfortunately, you find that the financing is concentrated in a few ecosystems and sectors, such as fintech and others. However, the majority of youth-owned enterprises across the continent are still small, formal, and operating from survival rather than scale. So what we need to do is really to see how to scale this. And this is where I think Karima was talking about looking at the quality of jobs and the quality of support that we provide to youth businesses, so that they move from informal, micro-scale, necessity-driven, and actually grow to more sustainable ones. Next slide, please. Now, the real problem, really, as I had mentioned, is moving from survival entrepreneurship to scale. Because most young entrepreneurs are not failing because they lack ideas. Actually, they lack scale and the ecosystem to support them in that scale. They often struggle because the surrounding ecosystem does not support growth. They often face shallow early-stage finance, weak incubation and business development services. They have limited access, to markets and networks. There are many challenges in regulations. When you're trying to set up a small business, you go through so many hurdles that many don't even pass that stage. And also, we find serious gaps, technology gaps, infrastructure gaps, both soft and hard infrastructure. And also, there are some gender-specific barriers to young women, such as access to assets, networks, mobility, and finance. So we find that the challenge really is systemic and not only individual. Next slide, please. Now, challenge one, which I think is the biggest, is finance. This is still the biggest bottleneck. We have entrepreneurs, but not enough patient risk capital and growth capital. So you find that Africa's venture capital market is still too thin, too extremely dependent, and also too cyclical. IFC has reported that about 80% of African startup funding comes from abroad, outside. Now, what that means is that whenever there is global issues or challenges in global markets, African firms, they suffer very quickly and end up being on the receiving end. For example, right now with what is going on with the war in the Middle East, I'm sure that the startup capital that has been coming is going to dry up. So many of our startups are going to suffer. Now, this financing gap is even wider for women founders. So improving access is not just access to finance is not a side issue, but this is really one of the main challenges that we face and we need to address. Later on, I'll discuss a bit more of what the bank is doing to address this particular challenge. For women, actually about 6.8% of investment in 2024, actually only for startups only went to women enterprises. Next slide. The other challenge that we face is on jobs quality, informality, and weak transitions from firm growth. That on the continent, we not only need more businesses, but we need better businesses, better jobs. Right now at the bank, we are actually looking at how do we measure jobs? How do we incorporate, design all our projects to create jobs, not only jobs in terms of numbers, but in terms of the quality of the jobs that are created. For example, you find that in 2023, nearly 3 in 4 young adult workers, that's 75% in sub-Saharan Africa, were in insecure work. So this is something that we really need to address by focusing on productivity, on formalization, of our jobs and businesses, on competitiveness, and on job quality. We find also now agriculture is one of the areas where a lot of jobs can be created. It has a big potential. And as of now, actually about 60% of youth employment in 2021 was in the agriculture sector. Now, as I said earlier, we need to find a way to help these firms move from productive, move into more productive, enterprises, make them more formalized, so that they can create, quality jobs and also create more jobs and scale up, a job creation. Next slide. Now, where are the opportunities? We want to see that there are quite a number of opportunities. Initially, I mentioned earlier that fintech is one of the areas that is getting a lot of startup capital. Fintech and digital services, for sure, that is an area, that many youth actually on the continent, who are very, tech savvy. At the bank, we have under Enable Youth, an agri-pitch competition every year, and about half of the entries are in the fintech area. However, this is not the only area. There are other broader areas where there are a lot of opportunities: agribusiness, climate smart enterprises, and we shall see later on some of the other presenters, such as Lesha, are going to present what they're doing in agribusiness. And there's a lot of growth there, and as the bank, is also supporting a lot of that. In terms of processing, logistics, e-commerce, manufacturing, creative industries, there's so many opportunities. I always look at this, especially, for example, in e-commerce. For me, being, I think, in my age group, if I want to buy a pair of shoes, I have to go look for a mall, look for a shop that sells shoes, and maybe I find 2 or 3. And I'll buy it there. So it takes me time to get out of my house, to go and buy, and I don't even have a wide variety. But I've seen my daughter, who's a young Gen Z, if she wants to buy a pair of shoes, she goes on her phone here in Nairobi. She has a range of 20 different types of shoes, and they'll deliver it at the door by the next day, or even on the same day. So there's so many opportunities that are there, that are coming up in health, education, and other skills platforms. So I won't get into the details of this, but any of these areas, if you look at it, there's a lot of opportunities, as long as the firms can come and solve real economic bottlenecks. There are many opportunities in this area. Next slide. Now, I'll talk about what the bank is doing in some of these areas. And the first one, and one of the most appropriate, I think, for this discussion, is the bank's Enable Youth program. This is a program that builds youth entrepreneurs in sectors with strong job multipliers, in this case, the agribusiness sector. And this is the initiative that I coordinate. So it has 4 key areas of intervention. We look at the enabling ecosystem. We look at policy and advocacy for youth employment, youth entrepreneurship. We create an enabling environment through enabling incubation, skills, and markets. So we work through mostly incubators, to provide youth with agronomic skills, business development skills. And then we have a facility where we call it access to finance, so that the youth who have gone through the incubation process can actually access finance. And there are different blended facilities that are suitable for youth businesses. So there's some grants, there's some concessional financing, there are guarantees to address the need or the stage of growth of the youth. Now, one new area that we're introducing is the enabling digitalization, because this is an area that allows us really to provide services, at the last mile, at saving a lot on the cost. Now, under the Enable Youth program, we also have an annual agri-pitch competition where we select a few youth, and they go through a boot camp for about a week or two, and they get training, BDS, master classes on positioning their businesses, basically getting these SMEs investor ready. And at the end, they pitch, and they pitch to a panel of judges, and the winners receive some seed capital. We also try to link them up, with impact investors, and other investors along the way. So really, this is one of the big examples, and it has had a lot of success. We have projects in about 18 African countries. We have invested as a bank over the last 8 years or so about $670 million in these 18 countries for these under Enable Youth. And also we have supporting roughly about 100,000 youth directly. So this is one of the facilities or initiatives. Next slide. However, we also have quite a number of other facilities, which I won't get into all the details, but we have the Agri-Food Catalytic Financing Mechanism, which addresses agri-SME financing gap with concessional capital and technical assistance. We have also an initiative called the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks. So we have these in about 4 or 5 countries. For example, there's one that was approved recently in Liberia, which is expected to support 30,000 youth-led businesses and create 120,000 direct and indirect jobs. We have a facility that we have been working on with the European Union called Boost Africa, which is designed to enable entrepreneurship and innovation and create quality jobs for young people. There's also another facility called the Youth Entrepreneurship and Innovation Multi-Donor Trust Fund. So this is a trust fund that finances, is a grant facility supporting youth entrepreneurship and innovation initiatives. Next slide. Now this is my last slide. So what is the direction and the way forward? There are 5 priority high growth and youth entrepreneurship areas that I want to share with you. One is to move from startup promotion to scale up ecosystems. Many times when we have our programs, we say, oh, we have so many, we have created, so many startups, we have created, 1,000 startups, but we leave it at that. We need to move above that and see how we created an ecosystem so that they can actually scale up. So that is critical. We need to build stronger systems to scale up. Secondly, we need to expand patient, blended, and local currency finance. So we have to come up with innovative financing mechanisms and instruments and facilities that can actually address startups. Right now, we have too few of those, and we focus a lot on the traditional financing mechanism. We have to build the ecosystem. Sorry, my light has gone off, but okay, it's coming back on. Yeah, we have to build an ecosystem to incubate, really incubate and provide these startups, provide business development linkages, services rather, and market linkages, so that the new startups can actually thrive. We also need to target sectors with high growth and high jobs multipliers. As a bank, one of the main areas we are focusing on is on agriculture and agribusiness, because it has so many a lot of potential along the entire value chain, from upstream input systems to production, to logistics, to marketing. So there's so many opportunities there, but that's not the only area. There are so many other areas where we can create jobs as well. And lastly, we need to measure our success not only by firms which have been launched, but by firms, skills, and jobs created. And here we're talking about distant jobs. So really, this is the real test that for all our initiatives, how many jobs have we created? Are they sustainable? Are they jobs that we say that okay, these are jobs that the youth can take up? So with that, I would like to thank you all for listening to me, and I'll be happy to come in later on during the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Edson. So providing this really informative context. I think one of the key messages we took out of this was the need to create ecosystem that will help young entrepreneurs to grow and scale their firms and create jobs for others. And you made an important point that actually it's a systemic challenge, not particular to any individual, but across the continent. And of course, the major opportunity that should not be missed by the African demographics. So with that, I would like to maybe move to the questions to our young entrepreneurs. So we have two here. We have Mr. Abel Ayele, who is a managing director here in Ethiopia of a firm called Bunaroma Coffee Exports, Ethiopia. He's an entrepreneur focused on quality exports and, of course, using Ethiopia's one of the well-known products, which is coffee. And it's also actually part of the agricultural value chain. And then also to Mr. Abraham Andreas, who is a CEO and Lersha, and you already mentioned him, Edson, during your presentation, which is an agri-tech platform supporting smallholders, again, farmers in Ethiopia. So with that, we also confirm your view that agriculture is a very important sector. So we would like to hear from you, please, from two of you. If you can provide a brief overview of your enterprise, how long it has been in operation, number of employees at the start, number of employees today, evolution, and what some of the challenges to growth and exports you have been facing. So Mr. Adele Ayele, please, and Abraham Andreas, if you can help us, answer these questions.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, hello.
Hello, Susanna.
Yes. So please
Thank
go.
you for having me today. So for your question, briefly, the Bunaroma, our company has been in operation since 2017. And over the years, we have experienced steady, meaningful growth so far. And then we started as a small exporter with focusing. We have been expanding our capacity to source quality coffee from our smallholder coffee producing farmers in Ethiopia, and then the company has been building reputations across the southern region of Ethiopia, where we do have our coffee supply chain operations that we can directly purchase coffee cherries from producing farmers, and we process on our site. But in terms of growth strategy, we usually focus on three key areas. Maintaining a strong relationship with our coffee producing farmers and then investing in quality processing and traceability. As you know, Ethiopia is the birthplace of Arabica coffee. So whenever any international coffee consumers, when they sip a cup of coffee, we have to provide them the profile and the traceable information, including the agroecology of the coffee where it is produced. And then it also we have to also provide the socioeconomic data about the areas where we have been processing and sourcing coffee, which helps us to build long-term partnership with our international buyers. and the roasters, because we call it coffees. We call it from farm to cup. We are talking about, when we talk about the farm, it is from the tree to cup. So that requires a strong long-term relationship. And also looking ahead, we aim to scale our operations by increasing our processing capacity, improving logistics, and continuing to differentiate ourselves through specialty and sustainable sourced coffees. So currently, our company, we have 16 permanent office staff. And during the harvesting season, we employ hundreds of temporary workers across our coffee processing sites. We support, they support both our operations and the local communities. The majority of the coffee cherry hand pickers, and then the people who are working at our washing stations are women. So we have also a special project, part of the company, what we call it Women in Coffee, to keep building their coffee is like a seasonal business. I mean, usually the harvesting time is from October to January in Ethiopian context. So those women are only getting a benefit from our operation, from the temporary employment for a very short period of time. So to keep them throughout the year to get paid, we have our own small projects that can support women in coffee. So we are currently exporting to several international markets, including North America, Europe, and also now it's to Middle East, and also growing to Asia, especially China has been our recent destination. So our future plans also include expanding into new and emerging markets by also keeping the existing ones, and developing direct trade relationship with more coffee roasters and the distributors globally. So I don't know if I also need to continue about the challenges. We have been talking about the challenges throughout the, whenever we have any different conferences, events, we mainly focus about the challenges what we face. But I think the most important thing is action. We have so many presentations. We have been presenting our challenges whenever we go, but to keep our company grows steady, we need to have an action, especially young entrepreneurs in Africa. They face access to finance, training and capacity building is also very important. Market linkage, it could be like trade fairs, networking platforms, and the business missions. Those can help us to connect African entrepreneurs within African continent, at the same time also with the other global international coffee buyers. So we don't have a culture of traveling within even our continent, let alone to Europe or Middle East and North America. So by having the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, we might have a lot of opportunities to keep growing, even to mobilize the resource what we have within African continent to maximize our potential. But we have, we don't have the ecosystem. Or even if we have the ecosystem, it is very difficult to practically, achieve those opportunities. So we have challenges. So those challenges has to be addressed specifically for the young entrepreneurs planning to enter to the import-export sector. So that will, because it will help them to build the journey of having a very well organized business entity within Africa, which also helps to create job for the users within their country. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much for these insights. And in particular, you focus on opportunities more than the challenges, including the AFCFTA and the export. So we will come back. But maybe right now we would like to ask Mr. Harry Devonshire, who represents AgReduce Foundation and support, which is supporting small and growing businesses in developing markets and strengthening an entrepreneurial ecosystem. So in particular, can you give us a brief overview of your firm? What kind of business support, in your view, is needed for young entrepreneurs to scale their business and create productive jobs? And also, how can ECA support creation of such ecosystems? So to Mr. Harry Devonshire, please, over to you.
Thanks very much, Susanna, and apologies everyone. I've stepped out of a workshop, so I'll need to return in a minute. But so our Gideon's Foundation is a private Swiss foundation. We fund a range of interventions in pursuit of helping SMEs to grow and create jobs. We do so by building effective markets of support and finance and investment. And we take a strong learning lens. So what works both in what we do, but what are others learning? So I'm here hopefully bringing a bit of evidence. I might unfortunately make myself a bit unpopular with some of the evidence that I'm bringing, because I agree with a lot of what's been said, but one of the key pieces is these challenges that youth entrepreneurs face are not unique to youth. And focusing on youth entrepreneurs is limiting the outcomes that one needs to create for youth. So we see, and this is across the world, whether you're in Cote d'Ivoire or Ethiopia or United States, a minority of firms create the majority of jobs. But in more nascent markets, the challenges are that those growing firms have more limits to their growth. So addressing their constraints is absolutely vital, because they're the ones who, one, create the pathways that others can follow. They create a growing source of talent, local talent that have experienced growth and can go off and are better able to start their own successful and scale up businesses. And if you're building the infrastructure that enables the growth of such firms, that if you're doing that in a way where you're creating the local infrastructure, the local institutions, the local organizations that can do that, then they can do that for other firms too. So hold the youth lens lightly is my first suggestion. The second piece is around this enabling piece. So certain things work and certain things don't. And often it's not what you're doing, so accelerators or investment or banking, it's how you're doing it that really matters. So paying attention to the evidence can make the difference between generating one job for every $10,000 or $100,000 you're investing, or 100. So paying attention to the evidence base is really important. For example, we've seen that generic training on business skills generally doesn't work. Being more targeted and more customized on your advisory support can be more effective. And then doing that in peer settings can be even more effective. So a recent trial out of Colombia found that consulting for growing businesses was effective at generating jobs over the long run, but you were 3 times more effective if you used peer consulting. One, because you get these network effects of entrepreneurs growing off each other, providing each other with networks and advice beyond any particular advisor you're bringing into the group. And secondly, the cost is cheaper. So there is a rich evidence base to be consulted and engaged with, and that's a rich place to go. The second piece is around building effective markets of finance and support. So just to bring one example in here, Mexico found we've got a really limited investment support for our early growth stage businesses. So what does it look like to build a market? And instead of doing an individual intervention where they said, we're going to give these businesses money or we'll set up an individual fund, they set up a fund of funds that was designed to build a market of funds that could not only deploy the Mexican government's capital, but could increasingly bring in other capital over time. So this fund of funds anchored emerging and new funds in Mexico, that were subsequently able to raise money from other local and international sources of finance. And the Mexican government played complementary roles on the regulatory side that enabled mechanisms for pension funds, for example, to invest in this market. So think of how do we build markets rather than, how do we build our most favorite firm? It's where are the growth firms? What are their constraints? And how do we build solutions for those constraints that don't just address for an individual firm or an individual set of identified firms, but solve for that segment. And I'll share a segment list in there. So I'm going to, I know there's lots of other speakers, and I'm sure there's a huge amount of valuable discussion to come. So my final point is, and the UN Economic Commission for Africa, you've got the member states as your principal partners. So these are politicians. So one of the things that we're seeing is really constraining growth firms in emerging markets and is stopping them continuing to lead is political economy. So if countries are serious about creating job creation at scale, then one needs to form those political and economic coalitions that enable folks to think about how do we grow this pie, how do we grow this economy, and there's some really interesting books and resources showing good examples here. But I'd point to one. So that was Mauritius, who had a slightly hodgepodge economy back in the 60s and 70s. And with sugar barons dominating, but they formed a joint economic council of high-level political leaders and business leaders and technocrats to think about how do we build a really productive and competitive and resilient economy going forward. And that enabled policy as an iterative muscle that was built over time that created an economy that has 100% employment. And some recent challenges, but it's more or less 100% employment. So those kind of models of really effective and ongoing problem solving between private and public sector are also absolutely fundamental to solving this in the longer term.
Right.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Harry, for these insights and also, challenging us a little bit. So we still think, before I turn to our panelists, also, audience who have questions, but we also think there is a room for specific measures for young entrepreneurs. They have less human capital, they have smaller networks, and when accessing finance, they definitely have less collateral and less credit history. But at the same time, clearly, some of these obstacles are also general. So
that's true. But if you try and solve, for example, if you're working with a bank and you're saying, here's the youth segment that suffer from these challenges, that's a smaller, less interesting market for that bank, which at the end of the day needs to make profit. Whereas actually, if you look at the wider segments of SMEs, you'll see that collateral constraints and so on are actually a big problem, whether you're male-led, women-led, 50 years old, 70 years old, or 20 years old. And that's, if you solve at the most basic level, you can create the solutions, then you can work with the incentivized actors who can address that problem. And then for the more for challenges that are more youth-led, or more particular to youth, you can then add that on. But if you're trying to, if we all solve for our particular kind of group of the year, that problem is often not big enough. It's not at the most fundamental level, and therefore, if one's trying to set up the appropriate institutions and organizations who can respond to that challenge over time, you're making the job much harder because you're breaking this problem into lots of little problems rather than what are the biggest problems and then how do we solve the next layer and the next layer.
So I guess your key message is that we need generally good business environment and address the main barriers for everyone, and then we can fine tune, because most likely with that we will still be leaving some segments behind. And then for us in the UN, it's also important not to leave anyone behind. So maybe we can go back to our second young entrepreneur and who could share his views. So Mr. Abraham Andreas, who is a founder of Lersha. And again, we would like to hear from you. Abraham, a little bit about your firm, a little bit of the history. Has it been growing? And what type of ecosystem changes you would like in general, and maybe if any specific to young people. So over to you, Abraham, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Susanna. Good afternoon, everyone from Addis. My name is Abraham. I'm a founder and managing director of Lersha. Lersha is an agtech company based in Ethiopia, currently expanding to Eastern and Southern Africa. Thank you, Edison, for mentioning Lersha. And I know the Enable program in 2017. I was one of the incubatee where we gained a critical skill to craft our business model back in the days. And when we look at where we are now, that support was very critical. And we always grateful for the support, Edison, we received from the Enable program. I think Lersha is an Amharic word, which is equivalent to for agriculture. And that also explain our desire of providing multiple service to smallholder farmer. As a company, we established our company in 2016. Ethiopia is agriculture-dominated country where smallholder farmer contribute a lot for production as well as GDP and job creation. So as a young entrepreneur, I was very much interested to go for horticulture production, which then later we also added a mechanization service provision. So until 2018, we were traveling across Ethiopia, providing mechanization service as well as farm input to smallholder farmer. But during that time, when you look at scale, it's difficult to scale in a conventional approach. So we wanted to adopt a digital platform where we can provide multiple service to smallholder farmers. So we designed Lersha, where we built a mobile application, but because of connectivity and phone ownership of a farmer, we also wanted to build a human bridge where these young agriculture graduates, leveraging our digital tool, connect a farmer and our platform. So for the lack of better term, we call them Lersha agent, but they are young agripreneurs, where they always create that link to a smallholder farmer by profiling a farmer, which it's important step to create a visibility of who are these farmers. The main service that we provide are farm input, mechanization service, financial service, and market linkage. If you look at a smallholder farmer in the Ethiopian and African context, no single service will guarantee a productivity of a farmer. So as a platform, we created a basket where we create a digital profile. We have in-house made credit scoring, where Ari was speaking earlier in terms of credit scoring, where we use an alternative data to assess the credit worthiness of a farmer. And we work with multiple banks, those willing to accept our credit scoring and to approve loan. Once a loan is approved, this agent network is leveraged to provide in-kind loan, such as seed, fertilizer, and crop protection. And the agents play a critical role. And as we speak, we have over 3,700 Lersha agents. These are agri graduates, but unfortunately unemployed. So it created a job opportunity for them. But also, these Lersha agents are connected with mechanization service provider and agro dealer shops, which the model is win-win. They bring more revenue for this mechanization service provider and for agro dealer, but also a quick, affordable, and timely service for the smallholder farmer as well. We currently serve over 370,000 farmers across 9 regions of Ethiopia, where we recently expanded to also to Nairobi, to Kenya and Uganda, with the same vision of making agriculture easy for everyone. Edison was earlier mentioning about some of the challenges young agripreneurs are facing in the African context, and our case is also not unique. Access to finance is a main challenge, where your growth is always limited by because of not affording affordable capital from financial institution. But there are also some critical factors that African young entrepreneurs should focus. I mean, when we're contextual understanding is very important. What works in one country might not work in another country. Times also change. 7 years ago, we were highly agent dominated, but now we are more digital. and that context understanding brought us to a phygital model. Currently, we have a phygital model where we use digital tools, which is a high-tech, high-touch approach, but the agents are also very critical on the ground. So that phygital model is helping us to onboard as many youth as possible in a rural area to connect farmer with not only agricultural service, but also financial service. The critical part is also providing a loan is not a guarantee for repayment. If you look at the agriculture sector, farmers with fragmented land, they produce also fragmented output. And big off-takers are not interested to knock the doors of every smallholder farmers and aggregate output. So the same agent network is also leveraged because they have data. They know how much is produced from a farmer. They also aggregate the output according to the contract a farmer signed with an off-taker. So it's a kind of a closed loop that provide confidence to the bank, to the off-taker as well. Beside the phygital model, I think designing or building a strong and dedicated team is also one success factor. Yes, you can be a founder. Yes, you can have a passion, but a team is also very important. And again, it's related sometimes with the capital flow. If you don't have enough capital to hire a strong team, that also limit your growth, which these also leads you to a partnership. As a company, we leveraged a lot of partnership across the last 8-9 years, where we have public partners like Ministry of Agriculture and ATI and public universities. We have international partners like research institutes, the International Financial Corporation, AGRA, and a number of development partners who really helped us to move from that early stage to where we are now. And some of the challenge to mention, I think one is the lack of patient capital and patient fund, where I think small ticket funds and grants like $25,000, $50,000 or $100,000 are very helpful, especially at the initial stage to kick off your operation. But as Edison was mentioning about growing to a journey where scale require an intentionality from institutions like AFDB and other, especially Pan-African institutes, where they inject fund intentionally to support startup companies. The other is also the fragmented service and market. I mean, off-takers and agro-processors always prefer work with the commercial companies or commercial farmers. But if you look at our model, currently we work with 17 different off-takers, and these off-takers actually understood the context, and the Lersha agents are helping them to bring big volume from this fragmented market. Souffle is one of the globally known maltari, and in Ethiopia, we are working with them, leveraging our agents by aggregating malt barley from these small farms. We are talking about 0.2 metric ton and 0.3 metric ton from a single farmer. But when it's aggregated from 20, 30, 40 farmer, it's enough to be in a big truck. And lastly, the invisibility of a farmer. I mean, financial institutions by structure are more corporate friendly than a smallholder friendly. I think the support from institutions like AFDB, because of their nature of working closely with financial institutions, that incentive-led kind of push is very important for them, at least to allocate some significant fund. I can give you example in Ethiopia where Dashin Bank, the last 3 years, we were working together with the model. They saw how farmers can be visible. So they allocated a big fund also for us to reach 50,000 smallholder farmer this year. I think beyond the traditional collateral, data and relationship is becoming the new collateral, where if a farmer is visible, if the relationship between a farmer and an agent is obviously through a digital means, then as part of recommendation, I have only 2. One is I think public institutes should be very open for partnership. Luckily, I'm just doing this meeting after we signed an MOU with the Ethiopian Agriculture Business Corporation, one of the largest input provider in Ethiopia. And such a partnership uplift young startups actually to scale and to reach many more farmers. The other is alternative financing. I think it's time. Everybody talks about we go digital, but when we go digital, we don't have data. But we need to start from somewhere. And young entrepreneur like a company like Lersha, we have data. And these alternative data are accessible by financial institution. We start this journey with a team of 5 and 6 people in 2018. Now we are a team of 135 people and more across 9 regions of Ethiopia. And we appreciate we were invited to this meeting, and thank you.
Sorry, apologies. Thank you very much for this insight. Very quick follow-up, just really very quick follow-up to both of you. Can you reflect on the comment that Harry made about the peer learning? So did you find it, because both of you are young entrepreneurs, did you find it useful? Was there, were there other young entrepreneurs that you could, in agribusiness, that you could easily access and learn from? Or is this something that perhaps needs to be supported? Just very brief insight before we move to the other speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Susanna. I think it's a valid point mentioned by Harry, because sometimes if you look at not only in Africa, but across the globe, some ecosystems are characterized by the same demography. My brother from Abel is also from Ethiopia. He operates in Sidama. We also operate in Sidama. Some of the ecosystems are similar to us. But because of experience, because of the value chain you handle, because of the partner and the way how your model is operating, such a peer learning is very important, rather than you learn through try and fail, but a kind of a community of practice where everyone try to reflect the challenge they experienced, what works and what not, are very important. But not only just through a 1 hour, 2 hour meetings or a one workshop, but I think a write-ups could be articles and journals about. We always hear about successes, and we don't hear a lot about failures. And I think knowing about those failures and knowing about what didn't work in the past is very critical, I think, to move forward. So I'm very supportive of that idea, Susanna.
Thank you very much. And now we can move to representative from Google, Prancia Boaguehe, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, who is the head of Pan-African Institutions, Government Affairs and Public Policy in Google. So, and also focusing on enabling digital ecosystems. So maybe the question to you would be, what are the challenges that Africa technology-based entrepreneurs are facing, and how can they actually scale their operations? And maybe we can start with that. And we can also ask about other technology businesses, that received support from Google, and how did it work out in terms of scaling and creating productive jobs? So over to you, please.
Yes, thank you so much, Susanna. My name is Boaguehe. I'm Google's representative to the UN Economic Commission for Africa, and I'm pleased to be joining you all from our offices here in Kenya. I've been following the discussion with much attention and pleasure, and even the chat group. There's a lot going on in the chat discussion. I think there are a lot of valid points being made about the challenges and access to finance, taxes, resources, regulations, and how complex of a system it is to navigate when you are a young entrepreneur. It's also difficult for us as a large multinational, so I can only imagine that it's that much more difficult for youth entrepreneurs that are entering this space, who are eager to make a difference and make an impact. And so a lot of what I look at from my vantage point is, how do we provide support for the digital ecosystem? So those entrepreneurs that are interested in the tech space, how do we provide support in enabling regulatory environment? How do we provide skilling and the tools that they need and resources to make people pitch ready? And how do people learn about the policy space and how to navigate that environment? Development, how do we make Google's tools and our expertise available at scale? And we do some of that with UNECA in partnership. We have a formal partnership with UNECA, but other institutions as well. So I look at the financing portion as well with the Africa Development Bank, which is one of my partners. And so I've been listening very intently because this is a real area of focus for companies, entrepreneurs, institutions. How do we de-risk investment? How do we develop innovative financing arrangements that aren't structurally traditional and typical, right? Because we have this different demographic that offers very real potential. So how do we finance the opportunities that exist? And this is something critical that we're looking at. So I just want to focus on two quick things, give you some brief background on some of the things that we're doing to address some of these issues. I will also share in the chat some resources that I know people are like, okay, what can I concretely do today? So I will drop some links in the chat group as well, and maybe share a little bit of information. And I'm happy to share my LinkedIn contact with anyone here who wishes to connect offline to continue the discussion. So Google has been on the continent for about 18 years. We have offices in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. We have AI research centers that are based in Ghana, as well as Nairobi in Kenya. And we look at how do we leverage AI to solve problems across the continent and globally in these AI research centers. And we do a lot of collaboration with youth and with entrepreneurs. We have an AI community center that is open to young people. We bring university students to come and work with us and partner with us. And that is in Ghana. So I want to make sure that people who are based there or who are going there know that that structure exists and is available. Secondly, we have a Google for Startups program. So we have many entrepreneurs who are in the tech space. For those of you who are interested or who are using AI tools to provide a solution. So if your product leverages AI or machine learning to address, leadership development or health or whatever sector it can be, if you're leveraging AI and machine learning, we have a startup accelerator program to help with the incubation. And that means we provide expertise. It's a 3-month intensive program. We do one-on-one training. We provide Google credits. We provide money, which is critical, and it's equity free. Some of the challenges that Abel and Abdurrahman were talking about in regards to funding, not only is it difficulty accessing funding if you're not from a traditional sector, but also the type of funding. So even if you're able to access it, sometimes they want equity in your company. They want to take some of the ownership, and that is hugely problematic. So we're providing some equity-free funding as well to individuals. And we actually have a cohort that is open right now. These programs are 3-month programs at a time. The application closes tomorrow. So if you are here, you are in the tech space, I'm dropping the link. Please apply for this funding, for this training to work with Google by tomorrow, please. It has supported over 100 startups to date. And these startups then go on and we support them in raising follow-on funding. They've raised over $112 million. And each of our startups collectively has created more than 2,800 jobs across the continent. So we have some really good examples of successes. A few that I'll highlight include Fleet Simplify. So this is a company based in Kenya, and they worked with us to really refine their company goals. Sometimes people come and they just need to narrow their objectives, and so we provide that sort of support. TrueQ in Nigeria. This is a startup based in Nigeria. They've used our mentorship and our expertise to pivot their model. So they were doing business to business, and now we've shifted their focus to business to customers. So how do they deliver their product to customers more successfully, and how do they leverage AI to do that? And then we also have many startups in South Africa. So we would love to see more startups from across the continent outside of the major markets that I've mentioned. I'm from Côte d'Ivoire. I would love to see more startups or more entrepreneurs apply from Côte d'Ivoire or from Senegal or from Cameroon or Benin or Rwanda, Togo, all the other countries, Mali. I saw Mali was here. We would love to see them to apply apply to this program and receive the support that we have to offer. The second is if you're not in the tech space, but you're an entrepreneur and you want to learn how to use technology to scale your business. I think the presenter from the Africa Development Bank was talking about going from survival to scale, the challenge of that. So we have a program that helps and accompanies entrepreneurs that are making that transition by leveraging AI tools. We help to introduce people to AI and what does it mean? What is Gemini? What is ChatGPT? But how can you use it meaningfully for your business to analyze where your customers are, to do cross-border trade, to automate marketing and do analysis? And so this program I will share with you as well. We also look at the African Continental Free Trade Area and the policies that have come out of that. How does that apply to a small business entrepreneur who wants to do sales across the market? Because this is another space. Even if you're successful, you manage to establish your business in your country, and you're at the stage where you'd like to scale, trying to navigate that regulatory space is just mind-boggling. And so this course helps to accompany people in that transition, and I will share that there. So I will just close by saying that we're very grateful for this platform, for this conversation. There are a lot of different challenges. I think we want to be constructive partners in the space. We're part of the ecosystem, so we have a responsibility to invest in people, in talent, in education, in infrastructure. We do this as well, but in policy support as well. So we're very grateful for our partnership with ECA to be able to achieve some of these objectives. I will share the links that I promised in the chat, and I'll remain available for the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this really fascinating presentation. And it complemented what we heard earlier, that we need to have some general kind of good business environment, but you're also talking about actually startup accelerator and fund, which is much more specific. And I think it would be really interesting if it's possible, and we can discuss maybe, as you suggested, offline, to really see what happens to many businesses. You mentioned some major success stories, but what typically happens when firms and young entrepreneurs go through the 3 months training, and you know, what are some of the lessons from that? Before we turn to attendees, I would like to invite our last, so thank you very much. And then I'd like to invite our last panelist, Selam, who's the CEO for Innovation Development at Ethiopia's Ministry of Innovation and Technology. So highly complementary topic to what we just heard, because Google is the private actor in the ecosystem, and now we also will hear from the government. And again, it would be great to hear some of your perspective. What policies and what type of support has government provided to young entrepreneurs, helping them to scale their businesses, and what has worked and otherwise? So to Selam Hunhaile, please, if we can hear from you.
Okay, thank you for having me. I would like to say good afternoon to everyone. From the government perspective, of course, I have been listening to the challenges actually posed by entrepreneurs from Ethiopia and across the board, and also heard most of the presentations are quite well aligned with the challenges actually of our African ecosystem in general. I mean, this is an emerging ecosystem most of the time. So we understand the challenge, but how do we approach this challenge? It's quite a repeated agenda for quite some time, and I know this agenda for the past 5 or more years repeatedly. So talking about them definitely wouldn't solve that. So what we, as a government of Ethiopia, what we did is actually we wanted to know where we want to go with this kind of startup in terms of promoting startup or those ideas that can actually grow and scale fast and expand and create more jobs and as well as wealth. So when we talk about this, these KPIs are not simple KPIs to achieve that we have understood. So for the past 5 years, we've been working on the Startup Act, which is a proclamation, and we've managed to come up with this Startup Act. In addition to this, we've been trying to work around where we want to go 10 years ahead, for instance. So we have to figure out what we're saying when we go from here to a 10-year milestone. So we put specific KPIs in this regard, by the way. We've tried to work with some international partners who have been operating in this ecosystem. So we put clear and bold KPIs, for instance. We have placed, for instance, how many unicorns can be achieved, for instance, in Ethiopia. That's not a simple KPI, but as I know, we have to put it if we have to work it. We have to work toward that seriously. So, in our ambitious plan, we've planned, for instance, 5 to 7 unicorns we have to be able to achieve. We have to make sure 1.2 to 1.8 million indirect jobs. We are also advocating for annual equity investment of 20x and 20 to 25% scale-up conversion. That means high-growth enterprise that are mostly tech or tech-enabled. And we're also talking about net new jobs after 10 years. So placing this bold vision, when we go backward to actually see where we are now, would be easier, in fact, to see the challenges that were being presented by our colleagues from Ethiopia and from the participants. So within this framework, what are the most pressing challenges of our ecosystem in particular and the ecosystem in general across Africa? Because we've been around many African countries while devising this startup proclamation. So as I can see, most of the challenges are, of course, obvious challenges now. They are not something that we figure out yet. So we have already come up with these challenges. We faced them. So there is no more need to talk about this challenge. So what we did is actually, how do we move our ecosystem from fragmentation to a systemic function? That is the most important thing to do. So what we mean by fragmentation is very clear for us. One is in terms of beneficiaries, for instance, those entrepreneurs, or whether youth or those founders that have some product market fits or that are trying to scale in the ecosystem. So who are these beneficiaries in particular? So who are we designing the policy for? We have to be clear in the first place. So we have made clear the definitional requirements to support an entrepreneur. Everyone is not the entrepreneurs, in my opinion. So entrepreneurs is an effort. So it's a special track for growth. So we assume these entrepreneurs should be defined and should be communicated across the board with similar kind of criteria. So our proclamation have clearly defined these beneficiaries. What kind of beneficiaries are they? Now it's not a confusion anymore. The second one is actually, okay, if we have these beneficiaries, how do we differentiate them from other beneficiaries? So we have placed, for instance, in the proclamation, a clear designation scheme, that which we have learned from the Tunisian startup ecosystem. It's a good deal, in fact. So that designation scheme actually provides a mechanism for others to identify them as a special breeds of ideas, to let them grow and have patient investment with them. That the patient investment is the most pressing challenge in the ecosystem. So having this designation in place, we're trying to provide for this designation scheme incentives, for instance, tax, holiday, duty-free, capital gain for investors, and for ecosystem builders as well, incubators, accelerators, and anyone involved in supporting the startup. So this is also another incentive package, including sandbox approach. So in our ecosystem, new knowledge, new technology are hard to penetrate. So do we have to wait until some mainstream regulation actually understands it, or should we allow them to operate so we can devise a mechanism to grow while regulation is actually going simultaneously? This sandbox is also another important piece addressed by our proclamation. And the third part is actually, it talks about mostly on the investment and funding scheme. So these three important pillars actually defines our ecosystem to move from fragmentation to a systemic view. And in the financing scheme, we have addressed three funding mechanisms because, as we said, most of the time investments or grants remain at the early stage. And the next step for investment is not actually there for ideas to grow to the level of exit. So for these mechanisms, we have devised three funds. One is the credit guarantee scheme. Banks, like commercial banks, they're not well positioned to actually provide grants. They can't by their nature. So what they have to do is actually they have to participate in credit guarantee scheme, which will be established, for instance, by National Bank of Ethiopia. That's what we assigned as an idea investment. So for this government, we'll actually have a regulation in place, again, to materialize it. The second fund is actually the fund of fund scheme, which the Ethiopian Investment Holding is currently working on it. So this investment actually places more of a need for later stage investment, like venture capital, attracting VCs in the ecosystem, because fund from outside is important. We cannot rule out funding from outside and grow. That's not possible because high growth enterprises or businesses usually grow from local to global. So we cannot limit their growth and the participation of other ecosystems within our ecosystem as well. This is not a conventional SME businesses to grow at this level. So we assume funding to be attracted from across the board and startups from the foreign startups, including, to come and actually grow out of our challenge. This is also another piece. So we placed a fund of fund scheme for that. So this is mainly for venture capital investors and whoever interested to partner with investment holding to invest on startups and other investment schemes. And the third one is actually, as our ecosystem is yet nascent and most founders are not yet finding their way to have product market fits in general, we're placing, for instance, grant scheme. So this grant is a competitive-based grant. They are not mere gifts, they're managed grants to be acquired by startups who are designated. So all this systemic approach will definitely address all those fragmentation of funding schemes, fragmentation of who the beneficiary is, fragmentation of actually different policies advocating for similar beneficiaries. So we're placing everyone around this. Now we have the act in place. We have passed it through the parliament. Now we're in the stage of implementation. That's where we are. We understand the challenge. We have set the KPIs for 10 years. It's unfortunate that we couldn't catch up with the previous entrepreneurs. They had been through, I know, many challenges, but that's unfortunate. That's what's going on currently. That's what we're doing. We welcome everyone to work with us based on the new startup proclamation, and we're open for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haile. This is also very fascinating and innovative. So, as you said, Ethiopia is taking a really comprehensive approach to the funding challenge, which is also significant. And eventually it will be interesting to know, but now we will turn to the audience, but maybe for us in ECA, who gets the guarantee and who gets the grant, how are we differentiating the recipients, and who will also fund the fund of the fund over the long term so it can meet its challenge. So, but maybe we can now see what are, attendees, if there are any questions. So I would like to give the floor to those who are online with us. Let me also check the chat.
Susanna,
Yes.
it is difficult to give the floor to close to 200 participants. So what I suggest is, as moderator, you can go through the chat or the Q&R and see what are the most, prominent questions, recurrent ones, and then ask them to the panelists. And Veronica and Flavia can also assist you by sending you some of the main ones. Okay?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karima. That would be much appreciated.
It's
And
already on your email, moderator. The main questions are already on your email.
oh, so I should open email. Okay, thank you. No, this is really efficient because some of them were in French. So first, maybe to our presenter, thank you, Flavia. And thank you very much also, Karima. So to our presenter from AFDB, so how does the bank specifically target or intends to target to leverage African diaspora financing? So we know we have also enormous there from remittances, etc. And also any views on the blended financing mechanisms, which seem to be particularly popular. So this is a question to the African Development Bank representative. To Edson, please, if he is still with us.
Okay, thank you very much. Great questions. There are so many questions. I had sort of just responded to the one about targeting the diaspora. I just mentioned that I would need to get back to my financial services colleagues who are experts in that area. But I think generally, I don't know of any specific program that we have that is targeting, diaspora in particular, but I will defer back to my colleagues who are in that sector. But I know that we actually look at financial resources from all over, and being a multilateral bank, we go on the financial markets out there, and a lot of our financing comes from our contributions or allocations from our shareholders, who are there are 54 African countries, plus I think about 28 non-African, non-regional countries as well. So that is where really we're getting most of our resources. And the second question was on blended financing. Yes, I think especially for this particular sector of entrepreneurship, we have to come up with creative or innovative financial support, and often we have to use blended instruments to be able to address this. So, for example, under the Enable Youth program, depending on the stage of growth of the enterprise, whether it is a startup, whether it is early or growth startup, mature stage, would use different kinds of instruments to support that. Either we have a few grants, not that many. We have revolving funds. We also have concessional financing and credit, and we also have guarantees. And we often work through local financial institutions. So many of these either would work through, sometimes if it's a sovereign operation, working through government institutions that support SMEs. So we would work through those. But we also have facilities where we work with commercial banks as well. So for example, if there was a commercial bank, let's say in Kenya, Equity Bank, that is looking to support youth SMEs, would give them either a line of credit or some facility, or have a guarantee where we can use that guarantee to leverage. They can in that way, they can even use their own resources, but we guarantee a first loss or some other kind of guarantees. So we especially for entrepreneurs, we do have agripreneurship, entrepreneurship, blended financing. I also just want to mention that traditionally the bank has not been in this space of SMEs very much, but over the past 5-10 years or so, it's becoming we're playing a bigger role in it. And for example, we have the bank just created an SME division just last year. So that would be a division really that is focusing on supporting SMEs on the continent. So it's an area that we are moving in. Traditionally, the bank has worked, mostly with big private business and also with governments. But now we're getting much more. We're getting to that area of supporting youth, supporting SMEs, and creating jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this explanation. That's particularly useful. And then maybe we can turn to the second question, which is only one. What type of training, maybe we start with our young entrepreneurs, what type of training you wish you had? There was also mentioned the mentorship. Is mentorship better than training, etc., from peers? And then also what type of training we had Google provides and what type of training can government at least fund if it's private sector designed or co-fund. So we would like to hear from all participants briefly their view on training for young entrepreneurs. Because finance is one skill, but also one area, but also the skills are important. So maybe we can ask Abel and Abraham, or anyone who wants to speak on the training. Edson also. So.
Okay, I think I'll go quickly, and then the others can come in. Yeah, with training and skills is critical to what we're doing. For example, in the Enable Youth program, we have youth who go through training for 3 months or 6 months, depending on the commodity value chain they're interested in. So they would receive agronomic training. For example, if a youth wants to go into fish pond farming, so they would receive training. What's the depth of the pond? What kind of lining do you use? Where do you get the fingerlings? So comprehensive, agronomic training. At the same time, they would also receive business development training. How do you write a business plan? How do you, what does an income statement mean? How do you handle your human resources, etc., so that they can actually design a business plan that is bankable. So training is critical. And we also have a whole department of human development that looks at training. We support TVETs. There's a lot of investments in TVETs providing skills for youth. We have an action plan for skills, for employability. It's called SEPA, and productivity in Africa. So skills is a big objective for the bank. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then maybe we can also hear from our young entrepreneurs. What type of training do you wish for? I mean, if any type of training were available to you, what would you opt for or recommend to your peers? So maybe we can hear from Abel if he's still with us, and also from Abraham.
Okay, thank you, Zana. I think in my perspective, key areas where your institution can support include export readiness and the trade compliances for the young entrepreneurs, and then if also how to get access to finance and the connecting with the local and local banks that can provide financial credit facility for their company, and then how to also keep the financial management system within their business, and also specifically for agricultural kind of commodities, value addition is also very important. and then branding, how to brand their product, their company, globally, across also in Africa. And then currently, as you know, it's the AI era, so digital trade is also very important. If there could be any training facilities that can that can be given to maximize the digital trade across the continent, and also how to penetrate the market access. Also, supply chain management is also very important. And then also logistic management. We have barriers of, working on well-managed logistics system in Africa. So by strengthening these areas will enable young entrepreneurs to scale their businesses more effectively, and also to contribute intra-African trade growth. So there are another areas of training, especially also communication is also very important, like how to like the dynamics of doing business in different continents is different. I mean, like how to approach like the clients in Europe, in Middle East, in Asia, also in North America, also within Africa. We have different business cultures. The dynamics are different. How to communicate. Some clients they might be interested to have email communications. Some countries they prefer like different WhatsApp or Skype or other means of communications. So to have and then there are also some companies try to approach to show up like with their they will create fake or just unrealistic company profile that can deceive African young entrepreneurs to represent them that they are a legit company. So how to also identify those companies, especially ICP international company profile, how to do the due diligence, which may help to mitigate risk to the young Africans. So it will help business leaders to navigate through all those challenges and to have a competitive markets access throughout the continent as well. So this is what my perspective could be for that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, this is Karima speaking. I'm about to leave because I have another meeting. But before that, first I wanted to thank you and your team for taking the lead in the organization of this webinar. I think that your contribution has really helped us identify key areas to be brought to ADIF for discussion. And as the representative of the ministry in Ethiopia said, we are no longer talking about the obstacles, the problems, the gaps. We know them. I mean, we want really to move with solution, and not only ideas of solution, but the way those solutions can be implemented in a very concrete manner. I wanted also to thank the representative, Edson, the representative of the bank, the representative of all the panelists actually who were with us, because I think that they made interesting comments, and I do hope that they will all be in June present during ADIF actually to bring those commitments, to speak about figures, but I mean figures for the futures, how they can support the creation of X jobs in the coming 6, 12, 18 months, and what kind of profile they would be supporting. And finally, of course, I cannot not leave you without one word about IDEP. you know that ADIF is the training arm of the ECA, and we are here to support capacity development. And I've heard with a lot of interest what the panelists said about capacity development. And actually, our analysis showed that what is missing, it's not really the technical skills. I mean, at the technical level, our continent has made a lot of progress and has already people with decent technical skills, or I mean, skills in the areas that the entrepreneurship is to be launched. The problem is about the skills that make one launch a business, and two, make it alive for a long term, because we know that, I mean, the death rate of young businesses is quite high. So, and we used to call them soft skills. They are no longer called soft skills. Now we have moved to the idea of power skills. And the power skills will, with leadership, with behavior science, with a number of areas that would help really make sure that the business is anchored in an environment, replies to a need, can emulate, can create consumptions, can support the development of the country, both when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, or when we go with foresight to a longer term with the Pact of the Future. So all these are really the idea is not to launch a business for the sake of launching a business. As I said earlier, it is not about making figures in terms of I have created X jobs, but the idea is out of the jobs I have created, how many are still alive, how many are vibrant, how many themselves have helped create jobs, etc., etc. So it is a whole process, and I do hope that all our panelists will be able in June to help us move this agenda forward. Thank you all for your participation. Merci à tous pour votre participation. And unfortunately, I have to leave you now. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Karima, and thank you for this, again, insightful comments. Could not agree more with you on the power skills, and of course, complement with technical skills. It's working really well. And indeed, IDEP can provide a lot of training. We heard from Abel how many skills really entrepreneur needs.
Yes.
So entrepreneur needs array, or the entrepreneurial team needs many
Exactly.
skills. So I guess we can contribute there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
And then maybe here we can summarize some of the key points, because we are really nearing the end. So I would like to maybe very quickly to hear also from Abraham on the skills, and then then we have one hand up there from Bonzilla. So if you can write your question, Bonzilla, in chat, please. So over to you, Abraham.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Zuzana. Her Excellency earlier spoke about the power skill. I think I'll read more about it. We have been talking about soft skill. Abel also touched upon some of the relevant skill, but I think from my experience, looking at also some of my colleagues, the financial management and the business development skill are very important to accelerate the path of a young entrepreneur, especially, building a transparent and an accountable financial system at the early stage is very important, especially at a stage where you try to raise fund. Such a financial system is very relevant to convince potential investors and your partner. So it's not necessary to wait until you become big. I think you can start it from at the early stage to build a financial management system, but also the business development skill. Sector like agriculture require a trust building mechanism, where most of the sectors are dominated by public sector and international development partners to build trust with such a public and international development partner, so that such a partnership help you to go to market and to scale, so that you become a sustainable, self-funded business down the line. The other is also soft skills, such as, how do you manage team, your leadership skill. It's always confusion to become a founder and at the same time the leader of your own company, especially at the first few years. There's emotional attachment. You always think your business is a baby. You are not ready to entertain feedback, especially when it's a negative feedback. But at the end of the day, as much as that emotional attachment is important, but it's a business. You should open your eye to look into the value you are offering to a market as well. So that leadership skill and that team management skill is also something important to be considered within the capacity building package. Over to you, Susanna.
Thank you very much, Abraham, for sharing your insights, which are really very valuable. And I'm just going to check in chat because there are some hands up. If I see some very recent comments. So I just see a lot of thank you. So maybe you can please share with Flavia the question and then by email, but we are really nearing the end. So we have learned a lot. And for us, as I said, we are here to entertain feedback, and very important for us is to hear how we can support. So Director Karima has mentioned one area, which is the training through our training center. And that would be very, very good. But I think one of the key lessons that for me that emerge is that basically we need some basic conditions before we specialize in youth entrepreneurship. So we need, we need basic environment. There was the issue of fragmentation of markets, fragmentation of land. And then again, once we establish the basic conditions, we need to look at the specific groups, because we know in Africa, the access to land is very unequal between younger people and more mature people, but also by gender, between men and women. So immediately there will be inequalities. And also then how do we guarantee access to markets, especially in agriculture products? That's a major challenge. And the funding of the fund, and really insightful experience from Google on training, but also from the Innovation Ministry of Ethiopia on how the funding can be guaranteed or provided. So if I see that there are some other questions, but since we cannot really we don't have opportunity for panelists to speak, I will kindly ask that those who still have questions, share them by email, and we will revert. And we definitely want to engage more with all the panelists and also all the participants. And then let me also take this opportunity to thank all of you who attended, our panelists and attendees, and in addition to our team, who has been working tirelessly on a series of the seminar. And from our division, this is led by Jane, who is also a participant in this webinar. So big thank you to them, and we will continue our conversation. And again, thank you for sharing your invaluable insight, and see you in June at the ADIF. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susanna. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you,
Our
everyone.
conversations, and seeing you in June.